Every morning when I wake up and I look myself in the mirror, splash some water on my face, I ask myself, are we going to make good decisions today or are we going to make poor decisions today? And fortunately, one of those days, sometimes you wake up and you make some bad decisions. And the bad decision that I made was I decided to go to a Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall again. And it was really interesting. Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally and today we're going back to old podcast style Wally. No fancy edits, just me recollecting what happened. Yes, as I said during my Beards video, I was going to go to a Kingdom Hall to see how many people were wearing beards. Now, just for a little bit of context, I moved about an hour and a half roughly south of where I used to live, so I don't really know a lot of people in this area, so I felt fairly confident that I wouldn't run into anyone, so I didn't wear a mask or anything. Now, initially, I actually dressed up like a little suit and the whole get up like I was a Jehovah's Witness, and then I thought, this is so stupid. So I abandoned that and just went in my regular old clothes. Now, observations, how things went, all of that good stuff. For those of you guys that don't know, I have a sort of strategy that I play where you can not tell the truth, but also not lie. When people ask, like, well, what made you interested, or why do you care about Jehovah's Witnesses, or this, that, and the third? I always tell people, I grew up in a family that was an offshoot of the Adventist church, kind of a cultier side of the Adventists. And because I had some disagreements with some of the teachings that they have, I have been shunned by my entire family, all of my friends, everything. They've all left me behind. And it's funny because that is true. All of those statements are true because Jehovah's Witnesses are nothing more than just an offshoot of Adventists in my understanding of history. Oh, excuse me. And I am shunned by my entire family. But the thing that people will never ask once you say this is, well, were you ever a Jehovah's Witness? So it's kind of a way of like derailing them, and then you can talk about things. And because there's so many similarities between Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses, it sparks a lot of really interesting dialogue and conversation. So anyway, I always go in with that as sort of my game plan. So I rocked up to the Kingdom Hall, and I purposefully wanted to be like a minute after they started or a couple minutes after they started, just because I didn't want to have to do the whole kit and caboodle. I wanted things to be on my term. So I walk in and the doors are locked immediately. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that's new. We never locked the doors at meetings we went to when I was a Jehovah's Witness. So they had the doors locked and they had a little Ring camera there. And then some guy, I won't say his name, but he was very friendly. He said, oh, welcome, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, can I just sit wherever I want? And he's like, yeah, it's open seating wherever you. Okay, so I did see a few people I knew over on the right side, so I thought, okay, well, I probably should go on the left side because I'm not trying to get found out, because my goal of this was not only to see how many people were wearing beards, but also to maybe start a conversation after the meeting concludes, or whatever the case might be. So I sit down, boom, plant myself, about 10 minutes go by. It's a talk about honesty, pretty standard stuff, pretty boring. I actually knew the speaker, but I'm fairly certain he wouldn't remember me or recognize me. And I didn't have a Bible, so I went and asked the guy, and just to kind of I was trying to get a gauge of the audience and see like who might be wearing a beard, and just the demographic as well. It was old people, younger people. And so I got eventually someone came and gave me a Bible and a Watchtower magazine, blah, 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 blah. And let's see, I'm trying to think of how I should tell this in order of events. Well, I'll give my first, thing I recognized was there was almost no one between the ages of, 18 and like 30, 35-ish. Like, it was a very few amount of people in that particular age group, which I think is really telling, because that is, my sort of age group of people that grew up with the internet, and there was not a lot of people. Now, the only people that did have beards were the very few people that were like young guys in that 18 to sort of 35-ish range, and they were the only ones. Everyone else, totally clean shaven Jehovah's Witnesses, standard. I'm imagining that the old guard, those old school witnesses, are going to sort of look down on people, even though they were specifically told not to when they made that announcement, to not be judgmental. But even the person that read the Watchtower, he was a younger guy, and he was starting to grow a beard. And so they're putting him on stage, like it's happening. You can't deny it. But I think there is going to be like a subset of Jehovah's Witnesses that are going to firmly be like, well, we don't wear beards, and I haven't been able to wear a beard my whole life. But it was really funny because a lot of the people did have mustaches as well. So anyway, I'll move forward just in the timeline here. The Watchtower starts up. I went to back to my car during the song between the transition from the talk and the Watchtower just to get a bottle of water, because drinking fountains are scary to me. And someone followed me outside, and he was, asking me, so I had to give him my little spiel about everything. And he was like, well, maybe we could start a Bible study and we'll talk to you after. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, blah, blah, blah. He seemed very, very friendly, very kind, wasn't too intrusive, wasn't too weird or anything like that. So I go back, and with the Watchtower study starts, and I'm sitting there and trying to pretend like I don't really know exactly what's going on with the whole question thing. So I lean back and I talk to the person behind me, and I'm like, are we allowed to ask questions, or can people only give their testimony? And she was like, oh, usually people just give comments or something like that. So I was like, oh, okay. So if you are, this is podcast style, Wally, so I don't want to do a bunch of editing, but the Watchtower that they were discussing was going into the deeper things of God, and how do we get beyond just the surface of things, and how do we really ask questions, because it's so important that we understand what the truth is about the Bible and everything. So I was like, oh boy, howdy, this is right in my wheelhouse. So I raised my hand because there was a question about how do we get closer to Jehovah, and I just basically said, one of the things that I found personally that's very helpful of getting closer to God is valuing all of the gifts that he has given us. And probably we can all agree the biggest gift that he's ever given us is our mind, our ability to reason and think. And I really found it beneficial in my personal spiritual journey to value that precious gift that he's given us, and not just listen to people that tell you what to think, but really dive into how to think, because I really feel that honors God. And the reaction was just everyone was nodding along yeah, that's such a good point. And yet at the same time, there must be something in the back of their minds going wait, that's not what we do. Anyway, I like being super troll like that. So that one went off without a hitch. Everything was cool. And then a little bit later on, they read a scripture in Hebrews, or Ephesians, that specifically talks about how things are foreordained. And Jehovah's Witnesses, for those of you that don't know, Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe that anything is they're foreordained. They don't believe that God has a plan for you or anything. They don't subscribe to that. So I commented because people were commenting all around it, and I was like, well, one thing, I like to remember is that God has already scripted everything for us, as it clearly says here in this scripture. And it's really our job to go and be in line with that. Now, when I did that, there was a problem. Wally ran into a bit of a hiccup in his whole situation, because the person sitting directly in front of me, so there was like a set of 3, no one next to me, and then there was a set of 3, no one next to them, but they were sitting on the end. They turned around and had a bit of a look, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And then, I mean, like a stare, I should say. And then she got up and was gone for about like 10 minutes or so, and then came back to her seat. And a little bit further goes along in the Watchtower thing, and then she raises her hand and she gives a comment. And they say, Sister X. And immediately I was like, oh crap. The person sitting in front of me was my sister-in-law's cousin. Now, for those of you that don't know, I don't have the best relationship with my sister-in-law. Before my brother got married, he was a Bethelite when they were engaged, and he wanted to stay a Bethelite. He wanted to stay in full-time service, all of this stuff. And I laid out a very comprehensive sort of thesis about why, if he married her, he was going to end up with a bunch of children, and he did not want children. He never wanted kids, none of that. And he did not listen to me. And I made him an actual bet, like actual real money bet. And about how quick it would take before, his wife was pregnant. And of course, within about 8 months, she had an accident. She was on the pill, blah, blah, blah. And after that happened, we made another bet. And 1.5 years later, another accident. She was on the pill and we made another bet. 1.5 years later, another accident. She was on the pill. And I was like, reminded him of, and he kept doubling down on the bets. Because I'm like, this is going to happen again. Like, you just need to get a vasectomy. Like, full stop. Like, if you don't get a vasectomy, you will keep having children. I already told you about this before you even got married. And anyway, so for that reason, and I think he must have told her about these conversations, and I would occasionally bring up these bets that we had made. She did not like me at all. And I don't really care, because I don't want to be like super mean, but she's not like the smartest person out there. I've never heard her like complete a sentence. The way that she thinks and talks is extremely like fascinating. You'd need it's like the old Jerry Seinfeld joke. You wouldn't need just a psychologist. You would need like a team to sort of deconstruct all of this. It makes absolutely no sense to me. But anyway, she absolutely hates me, and her family also doesn't like me as well. And there was an interesting thing that happened. I know I'm giving so much context to this, but just it paints a picture. And we're doing podcast, Wally, so I get to do whatever I want. But there was a situation where we were going camping. And so I picked them up. I was driving. We had to leave early in the morning. I get there. She's not packed or anything, having to wait around. Blah, blah, blah. It's hot as hell. She is just completely not helpful in like doing anything at all. Just at all. And so anyway, a little bit on the annoyed side, we could say. But with her family and the other side of her family at this point in time, I thought they liked me and we all got along pretty well. And there was an incident where one of her cousins, who had a run-in with the elders for drinking a few times, ended up getting like super drunk. And I myself, Wally, the one time in my life that I got blackout drunk, and I'll never do it again because it is awful. So I ended up with 2 shots of scotch and 1 beer. Now, mind you, because of the stress of having to deal with this person, my sister-in-law, who is just very frustrating to be around. She's just not with my personality type. Other people, maybe they get along with her, but with my personality type and a lot of my weird little tics and eccentricities and way that I see the world, like I don't have to get along with everybody, but we are oil and water. Like I like logic and reason and a plan and talking about interesting things like books and science and philosophy and psychology. And this was even like my later days as a witness. Like, I was a big reader. And she, she's never completed a sentence as far as I know. Me and my grandma used to even joke about it. Like, have you ever heard her complete like a thought, like brain to mouth to ears to understanding? And she was like, I don't think it's ever happened. Anyway, but I was fairly friendly with other parts of her family. But with this whole drinking thing, with the 2 shots of scotch and the beer, I got completely like blasted. I hadn't eaten all day. I was stressed. I hadn't drinking any water. And it hit me like a truck. Mind you, I'm 21 years old, so the whole drinking experience is all pretty new. So anyway, it was a whole hootenanny, a real situation. I don't even know what was going on because I was, again, blackout drunk. So what I said or what I did, that is only Jesus knows at this point. But fast forward, of course, my brother was like, oh, yeah, well, you got to tell the elders. So I told the elders about what happened and how I got drunk. And they were like, okay, nothing's going to happen. It's going to be fine. You know, it was your first time. You're only 21 years old. It's not like a pattern, blah, blah, blah. Basically, nothing's going to happen. And about a month, 2 months goes by. And then it becomes this whole issue because her cousin ended up getting disfellowshipped for it. And her family wasn't happy because nothing happened to me and something happened to him. And the problem is that he had like a pattern and things in the past. And so basically her family after that moment just completely despised me. There was this whole situation where they had to get the circuit overseer and I think even the branch involved because her elder family on her side and all of her uncles were elders. They were basically trying to say how it was public enough and they were offended. And if you live in the Jehovah's Witness world, the publicity of something is more important than the thing you actually did. So they caused a massive stink over the whole situation. And I ended up getting reproved for like 6 months. And it was terrible because, you know, they go to the meeting and anyway, the whole situation was completely cooked. And her family just could not stand me after that point. So that's all of that is just to say my dumbass sat right behind my sister-in-law's cousin, and I didn't even realize it until she raised her hand, said her name, and then gave a comment. And as soon as I heard her voice, I was like, oh, Jesus. Well, I guess I can't go ahead with my plan because I was planning to like try and talk to people after and ask some questions about Watchtower. So I wasn't able to do any of that right at the very end during the song. I just kind of packed up my stuff and left unceremoniously. It was nothing too serious. My computer just died? I don't know. Oh, no, I think we're still live. Okay, we're good. Anyway, so that's kind of how that went. Another observation that I did have was the few young people, teenagers, were very unengaged, like to the point where they weren't looking up the scriptures, not even on their tablets. They were just sitting, like staring straight forward, like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. This sucks. I hate this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Their demeanor was really different than what I remember from the last time I was in a Kingdom Hall. So they were very, just unengaged whatsoever. So that was a little bit interesting. And then I guess the overall dynamics and the population's not the right word. Demographics. There it was somewhere in there. The demographics were trending as far as this particular congregation older. It was basically 55 plus community with a few of their grandkids visiting. And there was like maybe like 4 or so like families, and those ones were absolutely not engaged whatsoever. So long and short of the story is I don't know if she recognized me, but I don't know why else she would have gotten up and left for like 10 minutes after I gave that comment and then come back, and just her demeanor, like she was like shaking a lot in her chair, which, I mean, a lot of people, like, they have the nervous knee. But one other thing that I did think was how sad it was, because me and her are the exact same age. I think we started pioneering at the exact same time even. And I was just thinking to myself, so here she is, still single. You know, she's 34, 35 years old now, is not dated people, just been pioneering. I think she did a little bit of traveling and like seldom work territory where she goes to like El Salvador or some country. It was either Costa Rica or El Salvador. I can't remember exactly, but I just thought it was so sad that, you know, you have someone that has that's like the same age as me, that has dedicated their entire life to this organization, and nothing has happened. I mean, all of the changes, blah, blah, blah. Yes, a lot has happened, but for her personally, nothing has happened, because at the end of the day, being a Jehovah's Witness is going to meetings, going out in service, doing your personal study, and listening to the governing body. And those core elements are still exactly the same. So, yeah, it was really sad. Oh, yeah, one other thing that I thought of is during the Watchtower, they were talking a little bit about, like, the end times and the Great Tribulation and Armageddon. And that is another thing that hasn't changed. So at the meetings, you know, people raise their hands and give comments, and you have certain people in the audience that are like your fallback people. And I was one of these fallback people. There was even like people in congregations that I attended that would just call on me if I didn't raise my hand, just so they would know, like, okay, well, if we call on Wally, at least he'll say something, like, just so we don't have to stand here awkwardly. So there's certain people that are like that, where they'll just always bail you out, and so it's not terribly awkward. But the exact same thing happened as when I was a witness. You're talking about, ooh, paradise, la-di-da-di-da. Lots of people commenting, everything, you know, is going smoothly. As soon as it has to do with like a doctrinal thing, a something that maybe requires at least 15 active brain synapses to be firing at the same time, nothing. Radio silence. I don't understand the 1,000-year reign and the Great Tribulation and Gog of Magog and Ezekiel and Revelation. Dead silence. No one was giving comments. So it was exactly the same as how it used to be. And even one person even admitted, like, well, I don't really fully understand. And I'm just like, so y'all want the paradise, you just don't understand the route that you're going to get there. Well, guess what? The whole Watchtower was like, God doesn't have a plan, he has a purpose. So it's not about how you get there, it's just a matter of you getting there. Oh my goodness. So Wally went to a meeting, and I guess the whole reason I even did this was to report on how many beards. Did I even say that at the beginning? I don't know. Maybe I did. Well, there was about like four. Yeah, I did. There was like 4 or 5 people, maybe, 4 or 5 that had beards. And most of them were of a particular demographic. I think all the old white guys are going to probably like stick to it. But yeah, that was me going to a meeting. I wish I would have been able to engage more with the witnesses and talk to them. But I think there's a 0% chance, because she would have turned around immediately and just been like, so what are you doing here? And it would have all just gone terribly, terribly wrong. And when I go to meetings, I'm not trying to be a nuisance. I'm not trying to inconvenience anyone. But as soon as she like tells people who I am and all of that stuff, because no doubt she knows about my apostasy, it would have been unproductive. So I just decided, you know, I'm just gonna get up and leave. Why waste my time? So anyway, that was me going to a meeting for the first time. Happy New Year. I guess I'll just release this after I make it. It's not going to get very many views anyway, but I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update, because I knew I said I was going to go to a Kingdom Hall and see about the beards. But with all that being said, this ends 2023. Stay safe, be kind, and look in the mirror and remind yourself that you are valuable every single day. And have a good ass day.